Since 1993, Chris Bird has been the director of the Alachua County Environmental Protection Department, or EPD. Chris is a board member of the National Association of Local Government Environmental Professionals. He is currently a technical advisor to the U.S. ICLEI Local Governments for Sustainability in their development of the STAR Community Index, a national set of community sustainability standards. Previously, Chris served as president of the Florida Local Environmental Resource Agencies and as a member of the United States EPA's Local Government Advisory Committee. Welcome, Chris.
Good to see you.
Chris, there's been so much conversation in the media and just, I think, among people who are concerned about these things, about the water supply and the quality of water and water both at the global level, the national level, and certainly with our connection to the Floridan aquifer at the local level. Can you tell us what's been happening in recent times at EPD in terms of water conservation and water quality?
Well, Mark, one thing that's emerged is the County Commission, really through the budget process this year, it was a difficult budget year, but one of the things they asked us to do is really redirect and repurpose some of our water programming toward water conservation. And so the whole concern about the water supply, and that is in our area, the Floridan aquifer, diminishing. And there's the main reason for this is just population growth and more consumptive use. But there is a growing concern about how that diminishing water supply not only is going to affect the environment and our ecology, but how it really will affect our economy and our ability to go forward into the future.
And I know recently some of the municipalities, not small necessarily, have opted into the new ordinance that's been passed, and that's dealing with what?
Well, the County Commission this past year adopted a landscape irrigation code, and this is really modeled after the Water Management District's program to try to make sure that people water on the right days and that they don't water between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., which is the hottest part of the day, where if you do water, a lot of it's just going to go up in the air and you're wasting it. But the water management districts have been trying to work with local governments to adopt these landscape irrigation codes. And the one the County Commission adopted, what we wanted to do was to make it inclusive of the cities that wanted to opt into it. And so we have had Gainesville, Hawthorne, and I believe Alachua is getting ready to adopt theirs. But our goal is to really get the whole county covered by this so that it's less confusing for homeowners to figure out which days they irrigate on, and it really won't matter where they live. Everybody will really be following the same standards.
And is fertilizing part of this ordinance, or is it a separate ordinance?
There's a separate ordinance, but it does have to do with landscape fertilizing. Mm-hmm. And so really going along with the landscape irrigation is a concern about not putting too much fertilizer down, particularly on grass. And so that's the other ordinance that the County Commission adopted, and that's another one available for the cities to opt into. Both of these programs right now are really complaint driven. I mean, we don't have enough staff to really be out driving every street to figure out when people are fertilizing or irrigating.
You don't have a fertilizer force?
No, we don't, especially not these days. But the idea is that there is a growing awareness. I think neighbors are trying to talk to neighbors, and sometimes if that doesn't work, they call us. But the whole idea here is that we want people to water at the right time, and we want them to fertilize at the right time. We'd rather, if they can do it, to put Florida-friendly landscaping in. What we found is a lot of the native landscaping that is used to Florida doesn't require as much water, doesn't require as much fertilizer or pesticides, and really save people money. So that's part of what we're trying to promote.
And then you get all those lawnmower engines that aren't spitting pollution into the air. It's a win-win.
Yeah, and that's, that's an example. A lot of these environmental problems, they're multimedia, and so if you solve a water problem, sometimes you're also helping with the air quality.
Now, of course, one of the things that makes this area so unique is our springs. Is EPD involved in springs protection or monitoring? Or?
Well, we continue to be. In fact, I think one of the roles of the County Environmental Protection Department is really filling gaps when the state agency, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, or the federal agency, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, when there's programs that they have that just really don't address some of our local issues, that's where we really get the most traction. And this is probably one example. The state was funding the Santa Fe Springs Working Group, and they were actually staffing that. Unfortunately, with their budget cuts, they had to eliminate that this year. So Alachua County has really picked up the leadership on that. And actually, that's something we were doing 10 years ago. So it's something we've been involved with, but the whole idea is to really look at the spring shed, and really in our area, it's the western part of Alachua County and even the northwestern part of Gainesville. All of the water that falls on the ground in that area probably ends up in one of our springs on the Santa Fe River or the Suwannee River. So it's a really important program for us, and there is new language in the comp plan that gives springs more protection. We're still trying to work out how that's really going to work, how much of that is going to be incentive-based and such, but it's really important because these springs are part of the draw that brings people to our area, and it's the things that our visitors remember when they leave.
Does that effort extend to the creek system in Alachua County?
Well, it does, Mark. One of the things in our creeks, in Alachua County, the creeks either run to a lake or the Santa Fe River, or they disappear in the ground in a sinkhole. And we have these natural drainage sinks, Hale Sink, Alachua Sink, a number of sinks where it's really somewhat unique. I mean, there's only certain places in the world where you have surface waters, and this place are creeks, or even the Santa Fe River, disappearing underground and then continuing to flow underground, and in some cases coming back out again. So our springs are really where a lot of that water comes back out. So protecting the springs, for example, in downtown Gainesville can have an impact. Protecting the creeks in downtown Gainesville can have an impact on the springs miles away.
And not only do you protect and monitor those water bodies, but you're also involved in wetlands protection, I know, and riverfront and waterfront areas.
That's a really important issue, and people really are attracted to water. I mean, it's just the way we are. And people are attracted to living on water and having these nice waterfronts. With as many people that have done that around our river fronts and our creek frontages and our lake fronts, the total of that is starting to really impact the water. So we do have provisions to try to safeguard some of those water bodies, and there's what we call vegetative buffers, where we try to encourage people not to just mow right down to the waterfront, because when you do that, you're just making it easy for fertilizer and pesticides to wash into that water. But that's another important area. And really the wetlands, we call them the nature's kidneys, but really in some ways those wetlands is our last defense, and they do a really good job of filtering pollution out of the water before it either gets into our aquifer or into our creeks and rivers and springs. But if we lose those wetlands, we have to resort to very expensive, very energy-intensive water treatment systems to take the place. And it's much cheaper to use the wetlands than to rely on these man-made systems.
You know, and I think it's very important. You touched a little bit on, you know, there's the federal EPA and there's the state EPA, but I think it's very important for people to know it's this local EPA's eyes on these local water bodies and on these issues that make it so effective. But speaking of other agencies, you work with a lot, and
yeah.
If you don't mind, I'd like to do a little lightning round here of the different agencies you
Sure.
work with and how that relationship works. You are the county-wide Environmental Protection Department. How does that translate when you're working with municipalities within the county?
Well, for almost all of our programs are county-wide. So when somebody calls, we don't ask if they're in a certain city or not. The one exception may be our development program. The City of Gainesville, for example, has an environmental coordinator that looks after some of their development review, even though we do work with them. But basically all of our programming is countywide, including the municipal areas. And so we're not really affected, for example, when there's an annexation. It doesn't really affect our caseload.
I see.
We do work really closely with the cities, and going forward it's going to be more important. For example, the irrigation code that I mentioned earlier, fertilizer, and a lot of these programs, water conservation, it's going to be critical that the county and our cities work really closely together and with the water management districts. But I think with a lot of these programs, you know, the key is we need to be able to collaborate. With reduced budgets, it's even more important than ever that we don't duplicate, and we try our best to leverage what other agencies are doing. The key to a lot of that is just really good communication and really good intergovernmental relationships. That's the way we're able to do that.
We were talking about water, but I neglected to ask you about your relationship with the Water Management District. I know Florida is split up into, is it 5 water management districts, but 2 of them intersect Alachua County, correct? Yeah,
Alachua County is kind of split between the St. Johns River Water Management District and the Suwannee River Water Management District, and our watersheds either go toward the St. Johns River or the Suwannee River. But we do work really closely with them. And part of the way we do that is through grants. They've in recent years, particularly St. John's has offered some cost-sharing programs, and that's one way we're able to work together and also to make sure that we're not duplicating.
How about the University of Florida? Are you involved with them on any level?
Well, we are. I mean, a lot of their sustainability issues, but I think just having the University of Florida here, it's like a lot of other parts of our community. They're such a resource, and we really are blessed in the environmental area, like other areas, that you have international experts that when they come back from wherever they're doing their work internationally, they come back to Alachua County, and they're able to share a lot of that expertise and wisdom. And so I think that's one reason Alachua County, our environmental programs, as well as a lot of other county programs, are nationally recognized. A lot of that has to do with our work with the University of Florida.
You know, I know you're also involved extensively with the State Environmental Protection Department and the United States Environmental Protection Department. And this might be a good segue into the Cabot Coppers issue. Yeah. First of all, I would like to just kind of hear what is the basic update on Cabot Coppers, but if you could do it in the context of how we have worked with those other agencies as well, that might be useful. Well,
and I do think the Coppers-Cabot situation, which I think we're all on some level getting frustrated with it, but I think it's a really good example of how the County Environmental Protection Department works with these other agencies, and we really fill a void sometimes that's not really addressed at those levels. The U.S. EPA has the lead authority on the Coppers-Cabot site because it is a nationally listed federal Superfund site. Right. So when it comes down to it, they're the ones that have jurisdiction. That being said, the state of Florida through their Department of Environmental Protection and Alachua County through our Environmental Protection Department and in another way, the City of Gainesville, there is a recognition that there's a need for all these different levels of government to be involved with this, particularly something as complex as this Superfund site. So we do work with those other agencies. Really, our role has been more technical advisory. We actually have been under an EPA contract to do some of that kind of eyes and ears on the ground work on their behalf. For example, the dioxin testing in the Stephen Foster neighborhood, that was done by an independent contractor, but we were able to monitor their work to try to make sure they're following all the protocol and hopefully to provide our citizens more confidence that this is valid testing that's being done.
Chris, one of the amazing things about Alachua County to me is that twice in the last 10 years voters have gone to the polls and voted to tax themselves to help gather environmentally sensitive conservation lands through the Alachua County Forever program. Tell us more about that.
Well, the program is continuing. I think we're kind of transitioning into much more of a focus on the management of those properties we acquired. And part of that is that we even though we have had two very successful referendums that created a tax to create funding for this, we are kind of reaching the end of that. And we're up now, we're close to 19,000 acres that have been acquired. We've been really careful to try to look at the way, when we buy land, we try to let the county commission know how much it's going to cost to manage this, because we know with these programs, it's that recurring management cost that becomes really the challenge. And one of the things we feel really proud of is that we've really about over half of the property that that we've acquired, we've found somebody else, or we've been able to partner with somebody like the Water Management District or the City of Gainesville or other entities to actually manage the land. So that cuts down on the county's costs for this.
Not to mention you've had incredible success in leveraging. I think you've managed to get other money. About how much more?
Well, I think it's been almost like 2 to 1 in terms of the money that we've put in and how much we've been able to leverage.
Yeah.
Now that's something that's changed as well. The state Florida Forever program is really not being funded at the levels it was. So our ability, we're kind of running out of our own money for acquisition.
Right.
But because the leverage money has been cutting back, recently we haven't been able to do as much of that. But really looking back over the last 10 years, we were very successful. And that window of opportunity that we took with the first Alachua County Forever referendum in 2000 and then the one in 2008, we really hit a great window, and we were able to buy a bunch of property. So really our challenge now is how do we manage this?
We've talked about conservation land. Let's talk about land that's being developed. I know that you all work closely with growth management and other areas of the county to encourage low-impact development. Tell us a little bit about that.
Right. Well, that's an ongoing program. And low-impact development is really, it allows development to happen, but in ways where it does less environmental damage. And a lot of the focus and a lot of what we've seen has to do with lowering the water demands of new development. And part of that, for example, is just the way the landscaping is done. Trying to encourage people to have landscaping that doesn't require a lot of watering. And for example, not as much turf grass. I think one thing that's helped the county with that area is the county has been successful developing some parkland for ball fields and all. For example, Jonesville, the whole complex out there, as long as we can provide people a place to have big open spaces, then they may not need as much on their own property. But that really saves a lot of water. There's obviously a lot of other areas with low-impact development in terms of trying to stay out of environmentally sensitive areas. One way we're able to do that is through Alachua County Forever. If we can buy the most sensitive properties, then we can avoid them being developed and allow other properties that maybe don't have as many resources environmentally on them. So there's a lot going on with that. But really, Alachua County's been a national leader on that, and we're asked. A lot of other local governments are asking us how we're doing that.
And are you involved in development review?
Yeah, the county has an environmental or developmental review committee, and it's made up of the different entities, not only county departments, growth management, public works, environmental protection, public safety, but also Gainesville Regional Utilities and the Water Management District. So it's an opportunity to really review these development projects in a very comprehensive way, and to make sure that on the front end, we can identify issues, because they're a lot cheaper to deal with on the front end than later on. I mean, for example, we don't want to talk to somebody after they've filled in a wetland. It's really expensive to deal with that. It's much better for them to know about that in the beginning when they're designing their project, and so that the footprint they're proposing to develop stays away from those sensitive areas.
Chris, one of the areas that I was actually aware of before I came to work at county government was the Household Hazardous Waste Center. I can remember, it seems like forever, you've been doing these paint roundups and hazardous waste roundups and paint giveaways. And tell us a little bit about the Household Hazardous Waste Center.
Well, it's more popular than ever. I mean, I think the number of customers we get every year, it just kind of keeps going up, and part of that's word of mouth. I mean, part of it, I think, it's just a reflection of a real strong community value, and our citizens really understand the connection between these hazardous waste and even something that may not seem that dangerous, but if it gets in a landfill or if it gets into a waterway, it can really do a lot of damage. So the program continues. We really try to emphasize recycling the materials that we get in. So for example, the paints, I think you mentioned the paints, some of our used oil and some of those that have a fuel value, we really work on the recycling part. We try to avoid having to really dispose of these. One of the new areas that we're really excited about is we did get grant money last year, and we got a new US EPA grant this year to look at biodiesel and to set up a collection program to collect waste vegetable oil from cooking. And we're going to be looking at that, whether it's restaurants or homeowners. We do have people that come to our hazardous waste facility, residents that are getting rid of hazardous waste that want to get rid of some cooking oil. So hopefully we're going to end up being able to make electricity or use it as a fuel. So that's our goal.
And I know that in recent years you've expanded to take fluorescent bulbs and to encourage people not to flush pharmaceuticals down the toilet.
Right. And we did get another grant, a state DEP grant on the pharmaceuticals. Actually, this year we're going to be looking at veterinary hospitals and feed stores, both of which have pharmaceuticals associated with animals. But again, the whole idea is how can we make sure that the waste from those don't get into our waterways.
I did an interview not too long ago with Kurt Seberg, who runs the Household Hazardous Waste Center, and it was almost easier to try to figure out what he didn't take than what he did take out there. I mean, computer monitors, all kinds of chemicals that are just sitting around your garage, and
well, and I think it's, these are special waste, and it really integrates well with the other work we're doing on hazardous materials to have that center and to have the confidence that we can recycle a lot of these materials and get them out of the water supply.
Now, you also got a grant, I know, for water conservation.
We did.
What was that about?
Well, this is a new cost share grant from the St. Johns River Water Management District, and this will help us to move our landscape irrigation program forward. And so we're hoping next year we can do better, but it's cost share, so basically we match with in-kind services what the district is giving us for this. But we hope that we can use this to kind of really work out this partnership with the water management districts in terms of reducing the consumptive use of water. That's really what we're trying to do.
Green infrastructure is kind of a word that's out there a lot these days too, and I know that can mean many things. I know you've been involved with facilities here in terms of the greening of the county's infrastructure, but tell us a little bit about your efforts there.
Well, first of all, we talk a lot about infrastructure, and traditionally we talk about highways and wastewater treatment plants and bridges and those type of electrical distribution systems. That's considered gray infrastructure. But what's gotten a lot more understanding in recent years is that there's a value of what we call the green infrastructure, and that's the natural system's ability, for example, to clean water, and we've talked about wetlands earlier, also to keep the air cleaner and to cut down on what we call the heat island effect. If you're in an urban area, if you don't have trees, you spend more money in Florida, at least, on air conditioning than if you have a nice canopy. So the whole idea of looking at green infrastructure and looking at the investments that we're making in that and doing a better job of quantifying what the return on those investments are. In a lot of cases, it's cost avoidance, because again, if we can have a wetland filtering water and we don't have to build a expensive stormwater pumping treatment system, we probably save the taxpayers money. So the Alachua County's really been looking at that, and other people have been paying attention to what Alachua County's done. It's not only through our comp plan, which is one way where we have policies that really identify and value green infrastructure, but also the Alachua County Forever program, which is really buying what we think is probably the best of that green infrastructure.
Well, Chris, the Alachua County Commission has certainly made it clear in their vision statement that environmental protection is an essential part of their mission in Alachua County, and just wanted to say thank you for looking out for all of us, and thanks for coming.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.